Guinness. Maybe we can do a mix of both.
He's just going hardcore. He's like
American Guinness.
getting drunk and like
Holy shit!
keep me awake.
One more sip and I'm gonna start time traveling.
10 calories. I'm not going to get fat out of this.
You just do like time lapse and he's getting more and more like.
It tastes so sugary. It's
It's
quite
definitely
surprising.
I mean, it's like white gummy bear flavor. I'm like, that's not a flavor.
White gummy bear flavor. It's actually. Oh my god! What's it taste like? White gummy bears?
I don't know, man. It tastes really sugary. It's hard to believe there's no sugar.
The office?
No, it was a CVS.
Oh, okay, thank God. I was like, I don't want to be responsible for whatever this man drinks.
You haven't got one of your programs just like asleep.
I've been knocked out before. Yeah.
Just didn't have their white gummy bears for the afternoon. Sounds like Arcol's just founded on that.
Oh, wait, we are live.
Are we alive?
Uh-oh.
We are
We're
live.
live.
All right.
Oh, shit.
Hope you enjoyed that, everyone. That was a
I
good
got,
talk.
Welcome back.
Yeah, we are back. We are very
We
formal.
realized we were live.
Whoops.
Sponsored, but no. All right. Well, I guess we can get back to where we were before, which was sort of introducing yourself, I guess.
I guess,
yeah. We can get back there and sort of
There's 9
talk about.
people.
People will flip back in.
Yeah.
You still got the view counter?
Yep.
Love your work. Love your work, Marcus. Get the crowd going. It's a hype man. So we got 30 now? Up to 30.
That's not bad.
Very good.
Not bad.
Thank you, Marcus. All right. Well, I guess we'll just jump in. You got a mic? Yeah. So I'm a lapel.
They're already, they're my.
Oh, you're fine.
Yeah, we're good. So
Yeah, it costs feedback. It's chaos.
yeah. I don't think so. No, yeah, it should be okay. Yeah, cool. So I guess you were just introducing yourself and what you're up to and what you do.
Hi again.
Yeah.
Last time we heard you, you're on voice.
For the third time. Pete Ziskowski, Design Technology Director at THW Design. So,
So I guess we'll jump in. I guess I'm in like a.
Yeah, we're already on.
I think it's already on, isn't it? Yeah. Cool. All right, we're still going.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I guess like just tell us about what your 9 to 5 looks like, where you see the industry going, like what really motivates you in this industry. Yeah.
So 9 to 5 is. I think we kind of discussed the difference between me and a BIM manager. So again, I'm more strategic in nature. So 30,000-foot view of what technology we're using rather than kind of the day-to-day ins and outs. I still do a lot of that. Yeah. But I guess I tell people I'm really bad BIM manager because I'm not good at enforcing. I'm very good at the strategery, but not good at the enforcement necessarily. So my 9 to 5 is a lot of just helping, right? In terms of project kickoff, what's going on there, a lot of R&D, obviously experimenting with the new technologies that are out there, trying to figure out what we use, how we use it, and a lot of working with, quality control and IT. We're kind of like 3 legs of the table, right? That I kind of float in between. Right, because everything we do has to work with our processes, or our processes have to change themselves. And I kind of say I'm not a tech guy. People want to lump me in with tech. I'm really more operations in a lot of ways. It's about process. It's about how we operate, rather than button pushing. Although I help out with that a lot too, right?
And I guess you mentioned R&D. How do you find usually you introduce like new ideas or new concepts or new platforms to the business? Like it's a hard thing, right? But how do you go about it?
It is. It's a step-by-step kind of thing, right? So it's a lot of me kind of poking around out there, trying to keep my thumb on stuff. As we've talked about earlier today, there's a lot of other products that have had new releases recently that I haven't had a chance to look at yet. But trying to stay on top of it is really hard. So that takes up some of my time. And then once we find it, so a lot of it is not just poking around the stuff for the sake of poking around at it, right? You got to have a problem that you're trying to solve. So, I've got a list of stuff that, we're trying to get, percentage improvements or process improvements around these things. And hey, guys, I think I found something that does that. Or I have a couple of things that may do that. It's like the whole process of just even with Arcol. Right. There were a bunch of pieces of software that I went through and narrowed it down to, okay, here are 2 or 3 that I really like. Let's get some people involved because I'm looking at it a very academic way in a lot of ways. I try to keep it real in terms of okay, let's reproduce a couple of things we've tried to do.
Yep.
But there's also it's amazing how you start getting in the trenches and you get people using it their way about how something will work or won't work when you thought it was going to.
Yeah.
And then take that to the next step. So the trial period. But again, a lot of it you have to stay focused on a real world problem, not just poking around and screwing around with something because it looked cool.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, it has to deliver something back to the business. Right?
And it has to solve a real problem. And I've learned this again over the years that unless there is something real that you're trying to do with it, you are just playing around with a piece of software. Unless there's a real, honest to God business case for something. And even internally, like we've had some things that we thought were pretty good ideas, but if I can't get anybody interested in helping out or writing a use case scenario or even, then it's not anything we need to spend our time on. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I think like I think the future of our industry is that the industry and the vendors that work within it just become far more collaborative. How do you think
It's a huge thing.
vendors help that problem? Like this is like we face it all the time. We go to firms and talk to people like you in your role, and we end up spending a lot of our time getting it introduced to designers. And I feel like a lot of our implementation process needs to be empowering people like you at firms because you are the gateway to designers. Designers are overworked. They've got fucking too much to do. They're not trying new tools.
Well, that goes back to good. When we lost our live stream, we were kind of on that, which is, sorry. And sorry, that wasn't a dig at you either. That wasn't a dig at you. It happens. It happens. Because we know technology, right? This kind of stuff is fun. But like these guys are the unicorns that I was talking about in my presentation in Atlanta. They can do a lot of things, whereas as the designers, most of your designers are still very pen people, or again, they need simple, straightforward solutions, not anything super difficult or complex. And so how do you get them interested in something is, again, it has to work with the way they work. Or because we spend a lot of time saying, and I hate that I do this, you got to learn how Revit thinks, or you have to learn how your software thinks. That's crap. And so, getting people like you, getting startups involved that are keeping the door open and making it something that people want to do and feel like they're heard, feel like there's a community. And, so we've talked about this type of discussion going on a quarterly basis, and it's just been so damn busy. I haven't been able to get into it. So that's on me. But keeping that constant flow of information of people who have the ideas but don't have the capabilities.
Yeah, finding a feedback loop, I guess.
Yeah.
How did you first get in touch with Paul and the?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
Mike reached out to you?
No, I found y'all.
Oh, okay.
And then one of the things that I really talk about with your team is the fact that it is a team.
Yeah, totally.
And you guys were the only group that really got back to me and started, and but it was
I know the name you're talking about, and I know we're not going to mention it, but that makes me happy.
but really responded quickly and were genuinely interested in the problem we were trying to solve and how we could work together to solve that. That huge. That's absolutely freaking huge. And that's what you don't get from a lot of people, even startups. It's like they already have their roadmap, they already have their idea, and that's great. And I think you do need a roadmap. But your roadmap is more like a bigger picture kind of thing. Here's our ultimate goal. We have a bunch of different ways we can get to that goal, and we can float a little bit on the way.
I mean, even to some degree, this conversation is kind of meta in the sense that look, it's like really easy to say as a software vendor, we should be more collaborative. We should work with the industry more. Yeah. We started this whole fucking retooling series in a very we don't sell Arcol. Again, we'll see later when everyone comes in. We're not going to do a bunch of selling of Arcol. Yeah. But the purpose of tonight and events like this is that we bring vendors, influencers in the space, and decision makers. And there's a little bit putting your money where your mouth is on vendor side, and I think it's onto the industry as well. I think it's no longer just talking about it. There are practical ways that can.
We just and that's creating the community.
Totally.
That's what you're doing here more than anything. Is it's not about Arcol. It's about the community, about getting us all together. Because
And
you know,
Dennis.
well, this is the first time I've had a chance to really meet,
Me too.
It brings a lot of people
and
together.
it's awesome.
It's not a keynote with a teleprompter like some other conferences.
It also signifies to us that there's trust you're building with our industry too. Like you're making the effort to like engage your industry meaningfully and not just turn us into a walking paycheck. It's like there's a real long-term vision.
Again, this
that I
event
think
is free.
Yeah,
We don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I don't care if you buy Arcol license at the end of the night,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit of, it's actually, like you can argue that like maybe it's biased for Arcol perspective. The reason why I started it is we've raised serious amounts of venture capital. And this conversation of like how can we be more collaborative, I actually give a fuck about. And so I woke up one day, I was like, why don't we just use some of our venture capital to like, if Arcol is nothing else but like pushing this conversation forward, like if Arcol dies and all we do is push that conversation forward, that feels like a valuable commitment to the industry.
Yeah. Well, then you
Something else could rise out of that.
change the conversation already with the Figma for BIM thing.
Yeah.
Bringing that back.
We'll go back. I'll go back there.
Alright.
I'll start ranting again. Fucking Figma for BIM.
I think once you understand that it works, but just having to explain it to people over and over again, right?
The frustration is not like it's not that it's difficult to explain. The frustration is now that it's become standard. And like when I first talked about it, everyone was like, "That makes no sense. You're so stupid." And I was like, "Maybe it's wrong." And then like 3 years later, everyone's like, "We're building Figma for BIM," and I'm like, "Wait a second."
Sort of got validated right at the end.
Yeah,
It's
so
It becomes obvious and standard, but so someone at some point had to push it.
But the real thing that annoys you about it, and like we don't need to keep fucking talking about Figma for BIM, but like is I think most people like misconstrue what it really means. Like people think it's like sticking collaboration in your app, and
No.
like to me, what Figma for BIM means is what if you were able to rethink your industry with collaboration at its core? Because that's what Figma did for product design. There was Sketch, you would email revisions back and forth, and Figma kind of said, let's stick it in the browser, let's build it collaboratively, and what could our industry look like? That's what Figma for BIM is. What would BIM look like if you made it collaborative? And everything's got, contract structure's got to change, insurance has to change, everything has to change.
Yeah, collaboration is not a feature.
Yes.
Collaboration is the core that you build around, and that is. And you're right. It's not just about how we collaborate. It is everything you just mentioned. Because I think we were having that conversation too. Is that even if we could collaborate the way we wanted to, legally, I can't.
Totally.
I am.
Totally.
I would
Totally.
be eaten alive.
Totally.
There is no such thing as integrated project delivery. It doesn't exist from a legal framework as it stands right now. We have to do things like create an LLC to get around it.
How do you think that changes? Do you think it should?
Potentially. I mean, it's tough. Design bid build is obviously not the right answer.
Yeah.
Design build is better.
Pretty good.
Better, but still not correct. I don't
disjointed
think
to some
there's still
degree.
some disjoint in there, and I think because as we've seen some of the conversations on LinkedIn recently, the idea of caring, I think design build still doesn't have the caring in there because it immediately turns into fast tracking.
Yeah.
But also we care about different things, like the architect's trying to defend their design, the builder just wants to get the thing built, the client just wants to operate their building as soon as possible. There's all sorts of conflicting.
From the like you guys more sit on the like influencer, maybe that's a term you guys don't like, but
that's
I'm going to use it because you are influencers. By the way, when you guys left last night, so this is the stream won't notice, but we went out for drinks last night with the team, and the team left, and I was like, guys, you don't appreciate. We just had the Aussie BIM guru presence. Nobody on the team was like, who's this Australian dude? And I had to be like, he's a big deal. Don't worry.
When I did the selfie, I was like, you guys don't understand.
Yeah, nobody understands.
I don't even deserve to be here with these guys.
So
So
you may not
like, I am out of my league.
You may not like the term influencer, but I think it's appropriate. How do you guys like? Do you guys have a unique perspective on this? You kind of like don't necessarily sit in practice. You kind of get to see the startup side, and I think a big part of the future of our industry is like voices like you guys. How do you guys think about this?
First film.
Well, my whole thing was about sharing knowledge and expertise in the first place, and to me, like I guess influencer. It's not that I don't like the term, but maybe it's biased towards like getting influence without knowledge or expertise. While no, you get experience first, then you can share it, right?
Totally.
And I just think that there's so much good knowledge out there that stays in the brain of someone out there. That's something we've discussed.
That's
also,
a huge problem.
Like the mentors and people with lots of experience that they retire and they they're gone away with all that knowledge. So part of it is trying to put everything I know about all the BIM, Revit, whatever topics and put it somewhere.
Yeah.
And now basically everything I've ever learned about using this software exists online in some forms, almost everything. So that's the way I see it. I wish more people did it. Part of the doing live series, also trying to make my part in extracting knowledge from people's brain.
I like that. It's good for you.
Yeah, I mean, I try to look at it like that. There's like rising water, and there's a helicopter that has to go further up, and I'm sort of just going, get on the helicopter, come on, everyone, because soon no one's gonna have time to learn Dynamo, no one's gonna have time to learn Python. It's all gonna get abstracted away into the expectation that this is just a base skill set that everyone should have, and people aren't gonna have time to catch up. So I'm trying to like literally just rise the water, if anything, with the way I share my content. And also, I like the idea that I talked to Evan Troxel about this the other day in the podcast, and I said, you're literally just taking things out of your brain, putting them on a shelf and calling on them when you need them. Like, I don't remember everything I know. Like, I have code snippets and all sorts of stuff that I would never be able to write off the top of my head. But like, I bury these things in tutorials on YouTube, and I go back and watch my own videos when I need to remember things.
Me too. Yeah, that's happened a few times.
Yeah.
Gavin, describe your name. What was it? It was.
The
Aussie B. He's like, that's pretty
pretentious, isn't it?
The Aussie BIM guru.
I'm literally using him as a quote tonight in my presentation, saying, "Pretty pretentious, Gavin."
It's a great name.
That's fun. I mean, it means a lot of things in a lot of different markets. Like, so, like, I guess, like, I recognize that, like, going onto YouTube, being on LinkedIn, like, you're going to get a pretty strong following from India, and like, guru means a very different thing in their culture to, like, in the West, it sort of means you're a bit of an uppity dude, an uppity fuck, as you call it. But, I can swear now, that's cool. But I guess, like, in there,
live, Gavin, it doesn't matter.
But ultimately, like, guru's like spiritual guide. You're guiding someone through like a pretty complex thing that they might need some guidance on.
I have this in my mind. You went to a kind of a temple and like almost like a Buddhist guy. Come over here, let's meditate, think about work sets, think about
constantly synchronizing,
cross-legged, floating and glowing.
I just synchronized with God or something.
Yeah, that's been level 5000D or something. Just floating.
But part of what I see us doing is we're acting as like the teacher that probably these students and grads and people that are trying to figure this industry out just don't have in the formalized systems that are available right now.
Can I let's turn the spicy level up a little bit. So I think if we kind of like take those three stakeholder groups, so like the decision maker / user, kind of like Pete's of the world, the software vendors of the world, and the influencers of the world. I think that like the most important is you guys, and the ones that can fuck it up the most is you guys. And what I mean by that is like it is so easy when you guys are in your position to not necessarily promote products. That's the wrong phrase, but to kind of like have an opinion and blast it, which you're perfectly entitled to. But what you find a lot of like, this is the spicy thing. Most AEC journalism is kind of bullshit. Like you get a press release, you repost it, and everyone goes, "Oh, that tool must be great because this magazine wrote about it." And yet nobody really did the work to try.
It's like surface level journalism, right? It's like just they want to have a story, but they haven't really got invested in this thing. And I mean, I encourage anyone that views content like what we make, look us up, look at what we've done, look at our opinions that we put out in the public domain, and use that to judge if you think that we should be informing your opinions, your learning journey, because not everyone suits everyone's learning journey as well. So like, I'd hate to think everyone would follow the way I think and work. Like, not everyone's going to think that way. So like, we have an obligation to.
That was, I guess, my question. Like, do you guys feel like you've got that obligation? Is it something you're aware of?
Yeah, I do, but I wish I could do more of it. But it's a lot of work, like to do actual journalism. Like, I'll give you an example. I was looking for a Revit wood framing plugin that. We're actually building one right now, but there's like 3-4 of them. And I was trying to find which one was the best. Trying to find the neutral articles about it. That doesn't exist. You have to try them out by yourself. There's nothing that exists that gives you, this is good, here are the pros, here are the cons. And everything you find is just the marketing of these firms. So I wish there was more neutral journalism about these tools, but I guess maybe we're too small of a market.
Maybe that's something we should be doing. Though is
an unbiased kind of thing.
Is actually doing those tests. Like when you go to like Tom's Hardware, and it really gives you here are my top 10 laptops. No BS. This is why I like them. Maybe it is on us. To do that kind of thing.
I tried to do it, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
And you're writing on 100% passion at that point, because if it's unbiased, it has to be unpromoted, it has to be unsolicited, and that's where a lot of these influencers, they do operate on sponsor models. Like I don't, but like I recognize, and I'm in a really privileged position where I've got a full-time job I can balance on the side. I've got a really understanding wife that lets me do this stuff on weekends sometimes and like listens to me complain about stuff. So like that's like not something every single influencer is going to have available to them. So I think getting an unbiased feed, it's almost like we'd need to look at like the neutral bodies, like institutional sort of bodies that should be neutral and unbiased.
But people are hesitant to go out there and criticize. They're worried about backlash, and maybe they know the people at these companies, so they're hesitant to just
How do you create? We always see like a Consumer Reports.
Yeah,
yeah,
like
exactly.
Product because this isn't a part-time job. This isn't something you do just on the weekend, because it does take time. And we're going through this right now with my team at my office, looking for some, again, model review automation tools for QA QC. We're looking at stuff like Guardian. We're looking at all the different tools that we've got. And I've got a team of like 6 people that we're sitting down there. We've got a spreadsheet, and I'm having everybody test it differently, because that's the thing.
Exactly.
You test it versus the way I test it.
It's different.
Totally different things.
Yeah.
A totally different opinion on it.
Yeah. But I guess part of it too is like we should be like selective in what we choose to promote as well. We shouldn't just choose everything, do a video on everything.
You're live, by the
because
way.
Come on. Yeah, join in. Come on. Yeah, or I'll have it.
It's already mic'd right there.
Yeah, you got the mic. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, we have to be selective, I guess. Like I used to take the angle of like I would both complain but also promote, and eventually I said, you know what, like no press is no press. Yeah. I just stopped complaining about stuff one day. Like I was getting pretty negative on like LinkedIn and stuff, and I said, you know what, it's better off I just only promote what I think is good. Yeah. And like then that's like at least a reliable way of knowing, okay, if that.
All right, Anton is joining.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think any feedback is kind of good feedback, in my opinion. It depends on the company. Some take it better than others.
But I guess I mean more the channels where they just do like neutral reviews on like every single product that hits the market, and it's like, what does that actually provide? I guess.
I think as long as it's not complaining. And it is actual constructive criticism about why I didn't select this versus why I did select this. It's not a bad thing.
Do you think there's anything else software vendors can do for this? For the like neutral panel thing? Like how do we like my view is like I think we should just put our products together. Like I'm perfectly willing to like put cash up to help support this thing because I'm willing to have our products go head to head. How do you think, like...
So you mean like literally product versus product? Like,
I guess what I'm saying is like, you guys have your like kind of influential, get the voice out there.
Sure,
I think industry kind of decision makers provide a bit of credibility to this, like whatever we want to call it, panel or platform, whatever. I think somebody's got to like dosh in the cash. Like I guess because so Bob will be here later talk about the IDC that they're doing where they've kind of raised all these firms put some cash in. I don't know if it's public.
Yeah, it is. They're going to talk about it.
Great. Okay. Good. I wasn't sure.
Well, the IDC is public anyway.
I wasn't sure if like some of the anyway. So the firms got together. They put some cash in. The idea was like, look, we don't want to rely on the vendors, software vendors. We don't want to rely on Autodesk. We're going to kind of do our own thing. I don't really see that happening for like an independent platform review thing. How do you get this? How do you, like, I guess, how do you get this?
Journalism is hard. I mean, it's a hard business. I mean, all these, even online newspaper, they're struggling. It's a difficult market. So how do you even make it work from a financial point of view?
But that's my point. It doesn't need to work financially. That's not its purpose. It's like it's a non-for-profit.
I mean, people, like I said, this is not something you can do on the weekends. The people who are being, you have to pay people to do this a little bit to an extent. And there's got to be some passion in there as well, obviously. But I think you made an interesting point where you're willing to compete on the merit of your software. And I don't think there's a lot of companies that are willing to compete on the merit of their software. And that's why we have so much proprietary problem with stuff, is because everything's proprietary. Therefore, they're not competing on equal footing with each other.
But then this is the exact reason why we should have this kind of independent platform.
We have a battle of the startups, and there's a stage. You have all the startups. There's one project, and they all do it at the same time. And
it's like a hackathon meets Shark Tank.
So
I was going to say, so how did your pitch Kucha go in the UK then that you did?
I didn't do it.
Okay,
I didn't get to do it. So I actually had another influencer person that he was like, why don't we do a video where I'll do a feasibility study in Rhino and you do an Arcol. We see who's fastest. Let's fucking do it. Ball in, game on. But like some of it is time, some of it is quality, but like you set the benchmark, I'll put Arcol against it. And if we lose, we lose,
Well,
and you
and-
should post that.
Well,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
what's
Like, we
losing?
should be.
Yeah, yeah.
What's the what?
What's losing too is that speed is not everything.
But that's, my
Well,
point
so,
was,
yeah.
you pick
Yeah.
the metric you're tracking against. I'll put Arcol up there.
Yeah.
Fine by me.
Yeah.
And,
The other
and there are
thing,
not a
too,
lot of
is-
vendors that will do that.
But information is information too. Is that even if you quote unquote lost, if somebody's watching that and goes, you know what? Actually, that's not the benchmark that I care about.
Sure.
But it's still more data that somebody can go on and go, I like the way it did this.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's still advertising.
And on that note, don't you all sort of have something to gain for doing this together as competitors? Like that's what I wonder. Like I said before, you're all competing with Revit. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Like to some degree, I know you're all competing for space in the market, but I mean, maybe there's a way the developers can work together in that space and somehow, not do literal wars with each other, but cheekily sort of do their head-to-heads. And also, honestly, you're the best people at using your products too. You know them the best compared to anyone else. So it's like the only way to form a fair user-to-user comparison is to get like the expert in both. And like I say, every time I see Mike pilot like your platform, like damn, he's fast. I feel like I'm fast, but I'm nowhere near. Yeah.
He designed
He just
everything.
whizzes like.
He can't use it. No
So,
one can.
and assuming all these companies have a mic or something like that, it's like put them head
No
to
one else
head.
has a mic.
Yeah, and every product thinks they're going to be better than every product, right? So it's a win-win game, right? I mean, the only thing that happens is you lose if you're not. Yeah.
You're measuring a metric with a specialist, right?
Yeah.
Like is another thing. Like if you
General users. Yeah.
you want like your general users of
Yep.
the software to be
Yep.
the ones you're measuring the metric against. Like how easy is it for that person to get in the tool, to pick it up and
Yep.
start doing a function or an output from it? Like
Mm.
you're not the bottleneck that way if
Yeah.
you're getting the person who wants the output to do it themselves.
And on that note, people like us aren't always the best simulation because, like you said, we're a bit of a unicorn. Like we're going to pilot these things in a very different way to a typical user. We're going to probably know our way around the user interface pretty quickly because we're naturally curious in that space. So it's like
And,
finding those right
for
people.
context, how this came about was we were kind of, I think it's like everyone agrees the current authoring platforms suck. And like we need something better. And one of the ways you can think about the kind of stakeholders is that's like decision makers in firms who we need to collaborate more as vendors and we need to help you kind of give you value. And then but there is you guys, there's the influencers. And one of my spicy takes was most of journalism in our industry fucking sucks.
Yeah.
It's like they repost a press release and everyone goes, oh, they said this thing is going to change the world. Everyone should buy it. And I think one of the problems that we got to solve is like how can the industry not be sucked into Autodesk marketing bullshit, frankly? And how can we just have like real conversation about what products are being valuable or not?
Because like showing, I try to do it at least when I make a post, is like showing like an example of something like that is frustrating to do traditionally, and how you can do that in a different way for a different output, or how you might get there faster, better, whatever you want to call the metric, right? Like, and show an example. And then sometimes I don't post often a lot with words, and if the video on its own can communicate the message, like I think that the thing's getting sold.
Totally.
I mean, I think an interesting take is it's obviously not going to make you money in the short term, but like if you find people going into competitions, you almost like partner up with them as if like you're a consultant on the job and you're like use our product and you sell it like in a live environment. Like it's hard because you're basically just giving your software away for free. But I mean, that's an interesting one to any of the developers out there. I think that would be like a really compelling one because it's being used under pressure as well. Often when we give these products to people, we're going to give them to them in a pretty safe, risk-free environment because it's very hard to convince the business otherwise. Whereas if you find the right environment, the right firm, the right scenario, like maybe that would be a pressure cooker that like really proves on paper it did work. Like it wasn't just me making a pretend building and pretend space. And so, yeah.
And I'll be the first to put my hand up. Like I'm not a designer by like any means. I'm more of a technical and delivery person. So like getting people who are good at design, doing the design and the tool, like that to me is so much more valuable than me just being like here.
Yeah, here's something I looked up. Yeah.
Well, and what we could do, I know what I could do better too, is report back on that too, like back to the community as a whole, where what our findings were on it. I mean, we talk about it whenever we do like a live stream or something like that, but I think it's incumbent upon me to spend the 5 minutes to make a video or something. But it's not just something I even think about. That's not my DNA necessarily.
You have it at the end of your presentation, which is like it's something about like share the tools you love or something.
Oh yeah. Like
It's
filter and only share what works, and that's how you amplify what you like and you ignore what you don't. And then no press means that they just die out because no one's talking about them anymore. In principle,
I mean, so I'll say it's on the live stream because fuck it. We signed a firm recently, and part of the conversation with that firm was that they had to maneuver how public they were about the partnership, because the Autodesk, the person in charge of EBA would be pissed that they're not using Forma.
Yeah.
And I was like, the fact that you're not allowed to publicly talk about a product you find interesting because you're afraid Autodesk is going to fuck you over in EBA.
Yeah, that's
Like, and like this is like one of the largest engineering firms in the world.
Yeah.
And like the fact that they have those guys by the balls,
Yeah.
that is fucked.
I'm saying the camera Autodesk, that is not good.
That's fuck you guys.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
That's
not
joking,
cool.
joking, not fucking.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's not okay.
Yeah.
It really isn't, because it's like
It's like-
actually impeding on
Yeah,
civil
that's
liberties
pretty
there.
nuts.
But
Yeah.
she should be able to talk about a tool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not just because you like a tool, you're not actually going in and destroying the other tool. I mean, that's a little weird to me.
Even if it is new. Yeah.
It's not even necessarily Autodesk. It's Autodesk breathing on the leadership at that firm, and the leadership being like, we should probably hold off
Finding the pressure
because
points. And,
we don't want to have our EBA or like be audited next year for seats because we're not using a free tool that
Yeah.
fucking sucks.
Yeah.
We're choosing a paid tool. It's like there's just a lot of interesting dynamics that I think a part of it is just let's pull up the skirts on all the software vendors. I'm more than happy to be the first one to do it.
Yeah.
I will start the movement. Perfectly happy.
Mm.
And like we should just have a body of people review products.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just you have independent people in different regions with different job titles, with different stakeholder groups,
Yeah.
review products.
I think as
And
long as
anonymously.
as long as you provide really clear like context to how it was reviewed, I think it's fine no matter how you do it. Like as long as there's really obvious, this was like done by a firm that's this big and it's like 2 people or it's
That's
like
actually, the metrics on who's reviewing it. So anonymously doesn't really work for me, unless it's the user may be anonymous, but those metrics that you just talked
like
about,
the role and the size and
size of the firm,
Yeah.
type of project, things like that, that influences
people ask
what.
might be servers. I think.
Fuck, they're an hour.
Are they the servers? That
So for people on the live stream, we are doing a retooling event in New York, and it's technically not meant to start for an hour, but I think people are starting to show up. So
I think they might be.
It's
The,
a good thing we can get them on live stream.
it might be the catering team.
Yeah, I
They're
think
wearing
it's
the same
the catering.
clothes, so
oh, you're right. They are all
yeah,
wearing purple shirts.
Yeah,
No, you're
they're
correct.
false alarm catering team.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. To me, like the live sessions that I'm doing, it's pretty fun, especially like one we did recently because the chat is very active and people are. Some of them are anonymous and they ask really good questions.
Yeah.
Like sometimes spicy questions.
They're a lot more honest than they would be.
They're really
otherwise.
much more honest.
Yeah.
And they ask sometimes harsh questions, but fair questions at the same time. So I find that pretty helpful.
So it's semi-anonymous in terms of,
Yeah.
again, like I said, I think the data of how big your firm is, what type of stuff you do, bleeds into your opinion of a piece of software and how well it works for you. If I were doing residential, I would probably be using a whole different piece of software, period.
Yeah.
Versus Revit versus something else, and that's a very big difference.
All right,
Yeah.
let's get spicy.
Yeah.
Is that the future of design tools? Is the future of design tools just verticalized tools? A tool for residential, a tool for commercial, a tool for
Yeah. I don't
The
think it's
hierarchs
gonna
of the
work this
world?
way.
Or I think modularized in a way.
Yeah, like bolt-ons and
There's
things that come together.
There's a
to-
base functionality.
Yeah.
I love the concept of web-based modularized kinds of things where you start paying for the pieces that you actually need of it.
yeah.
Like again, I pay for a humongous suite of tools of which I use 3.
Is it the AC collection?
Shush,
Yeah.
not-
We know any other tools other that work that
Say
way.
it publicly. You said it earlier. It's
Yeah,
annoying.
no,
Say it publicly.
it
Yeah.
is the AC suite, but again, but I think doing a modularized type of thing and again, I think if somebody really wants to own the market, as we were talking about, not on camera a while back, the idea of a foundational piece of software that everything can plug into,
Yeah, the glue. Yeah.
somebody could still really compete on that,
Oh,
right?
definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you start adding the bolt-on pieces.
COO?
Yeah,
COO,
yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
But and then
Yeah,
you bolt on the
around.
pieces that you actually need. I think it allows competition at a large scale.
Yep.
It allows competition.
You're not drinking this?
I will eventually. I told you I'm a lightweight. You don't want to get me hammered yet.
On the live
I'll make
stream.
a bigger ass out of myself than I normally do. I already don't know what's going to come out of my mouth half the time. But yeah, and then you have smaller developers that, again, there's somebody out there. You have a specific problem. You want to develop something for that specific problem. You may have a market for that. Nobody else is going to compete with you on that, but you're also not trying to create an entire platform, right? So Yeah, Arcol can compete with other people that are going to be platform based. People can do modular type stuff. They can also have their own modulars, but then that also now you're getting very clear. Here's what we need to do. We're paying for the things that we actually need, and we got people who are focused on these modular pieces, doing them well, instead of a big piece of software that does everything. Okay.
The part that I was going to say, like we talked about it earlier, is like the right information to the right people at the right time is like a pretty common saying, particularly for our industry and like delivery phases. But that goes hand in glove with the right tool for the right purpose at the right time as well. And I don't think you'll get a tool that does everything amazingly all of the time. And knowing the right tool for the right purpose at the right time is kind of key. And having that flexible enough that it's not siloed in its own area, but it can be connected and bolted onto other bits or be part of the development process as you move a project forward through phases. So
I think that makes sense in theory. I'm wondering in practice, for most users who don't care that much about tools, they would just rather have one tool and be done with it. Or maybe that stack is going to be for more specialists.
It looks like one tool.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
For those of us
if
who
they
are
manage to
running
do
in
it.
the background, we get to choose the modules.
Yeah.
But
That's
that's
what you mean by one software vendor.
I don't necessarily mean
Yeah, so
that.
this is the like, Greg was here. This is the like, how do you take data out of applications and how to spread the applications? This is like some work you guys, are you guys doing with the IDC or is that separate?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we're together. I think it's about one platform.
Yes.
It's not the tool, many tools on one platform so that they all can talk to each other.
Is that platform provided by one software vendor?
Yeah.
I think it should be agnostic to software vendors,
Yeah.
personally.
That's what I'm talking about as well.
Can it be done, or it's? I mean, financial incentives are too difficult.
I think
for it to
one
go this
tool
way.
doing it all by one vendor, it also can't be done.
Mhm.
Well,
like
it's
the flip side of
provenly
that.
it's provenly at
Or
that
at
point.
least an
Yeah.
independent party
Yeah.
that's managing the scope of that platform.
Is that the view of the IDC? Is that like what you guys think the IDC is?
That's my view.
I don't mean speaking
yeah,
for the IDC.
yeah.
Is that like kind of the goal of the IDC? Is to be that platform, or you guys just
Not to be the platform. I think we'd all say that we advocate for that.
interesting?
So do we start looking at the platform almost as a public utility at that point?
But
Like,
if you
like
look
who's
at-
going to develop that?
So if you look at the automotive
Yeah.
industry, they all communicate with the same standards, the same methodology,
Yeah.
but they're competitive.
Okay.
Right? But not one of the automotive companies owns or developed or created the platform that they share, right? And so the other example I like to use is banking, right? We all have our own bank. I don't even know what bank you have, but my bank I know can communicate with your bank. I can write a check. Your bank will accept it.
Yeah, I mean that's IFC in theory. In practice, there's a bit more friction than that.
After, like,
Someone's gonna have to take a shot rule. It took 40 minutes to get IFC sucks.
sorry, Building Smart International. Yeah, I mean, well, I guess it's how you avoid that not becoming like a Microsoft body that's managing this platform. And we're back at the problem we're at again already. Like that's because eventually someone's going to say, "I'm not getting paid." It's like standards authoring in the UK. It's very hard to get anything for free out of that because like everyone's doing free work, and then eventually you've got to pay a paywall just to get in. And
But also part of the like, at least from my perspective, is and I think I speak for some software vendors, is that while we're in this stage of like, frankly, you guys not having really figured that out, what the fuck do we software vendors do? What do we build on top of? How do we think about the future of the industry? It's like, is that just the reality that the industry is just in this kind of limbo state and there will be an answer, or is it software vendors need to help you guys figure it out? Like this is what like I've always struggled with. You know what I mean?
It's both.
Yeah.
This is a complex problem that requires a lot of effort on both sides, all sides. And nobody's going to figure this one out on their own.
Yeah.
And honestly, competition is competition. And they may have 3 or 4 or 5 different people competing for that base foundation. And one of y'all will win eventually. And eventually, 20 years down the road, somebody will have a better idea as well. And you will have to compete against that. But that's what drives innovation is the competition.
yeah,
I also think it's like I guess building and architecture has always been so bespoke and unique that coming up like with the right information to the right people at the right time scenario, every project doesn't always need all of the information at the same time. So if you're trying to come up with standardized approaches or schemas, people might not want necessarily all of that as part of their project, or
it needs to be a
they
scale
want-
up, scale
yeah,
down sort of
there
thing where
needs
it
to be-
works at different levels.
and then that's when you just start having that complexity and how do you cater to everyone in that scenario. It's just extremely complex, and you'll have people that want to go down a modular route or like a prefab route and just turns up to site and you clip it together and you've got your building. And then you'll have others that are like wanting this amazing, very unique thing that is bespoke and it's one-off and it's their piece of artwork maybe. Like it's very different, and how can your software cater to that? That's challenging.
But that's where I think a modular build on a singular platform, and the platform is going to be competitive. So you can't say, because you guys can't give us a good answer, I'm not going to do it, or we're stuck.
No.
So you got to go do it.
I guess what I'm saying is, like, do you envision the platform being a Autodesk, or is the platform a IDC, Building Smart? Like that's what's not clear to me yet, because look, I'm all for Arcol being the platform and standard. Right. Fucking hell yeah, I'm all for that. But the more I talk to large firms specifically, it's like that is not what large firms want. And there's like this weird limbo state of confusion. And like, I'll just be transparent. As a software vendor, I don't know if we need to lean into that and say like, we'll have you guys figure that out. Let's work together. Like, or if it's you guys figure that out. I'm just going to keep building my thing, and hopefully at some point we'll merge these ideas. Like if you go back to like the USD standard, which everyone seems to reference now, USD was developed by Pixar, and it became the standard. So does our industry go the same way, where a Arcol or an Autodesk develops the USD, and then everyone standardizes on top of it, or does the industry figure out the standard? We saw that with fucking IFC; it didn't really work.
I think it's a combination of both. I think by continuing to have these types of conversations, it will eventually get developed, because there is no way for us as a group to tell you exactly what we need. There's no way for you to know exactly what we need to do. But I think by continuing to have a conversation, at some point, we'll get something that does work. And it may be you, it may not be you, it may be somebody that's listening to these conversations that has a really great idea. Goes, I got it. That's where, again, competition enters the market, but that also helps drive the innovation. Helps you innovate on your product on top of it too. So I think it is one of those things where there is no clean and easy answer. It's continuing these conversations. It's continuing to grow the community, and the community will be made up of developers and influencers and whatever the heck I am.
New classes.
And it'll get there. And none of this stuff is going to happen ever.
I know you sit across kind of two of those intersections, kind of like large firm and IDC. What's your view? How does it play out?
I think it's both. There's got to be a developer involved, because we can't write a standard for something we're not building, right? And they can't build a piece of software and have a full understanding of what it is that we need. So that partnership, and I think as Pete was saying, is critical to this. Right? Either side can't do it in a vacuum from the other, but somebody's got to have a motivation to do it. I think that's what's lacking.
Yeah.
So just to help me with a bit of clarity, when you talk about this platform not having a developer, it's agnostic to like software provider, how do you have a developer and standard but not have a
developer and standard?
Like both, if that makes sense.
Dog leads the tail sort of thing.
It's possible. It happens in the world, right? It may be that it's a third-party developer that's not in the game of providing the design software. So we always think of the standard as being around Revit or a design software. Maybe those two things are divorced. Maybe the platform is owned by somebody that's building a platform for design software developers to build.
Automotive and banking, because they figured out which part of their businesses don't make real money. That's not their core business. Like, banking systems agreed on common things, because they could have all their individual banks and build their own software and make it work their way. But like, what's the point? Like, just change your interest rates and make that your USP, play with numbers. And that's actually how you make your money as a business. You entice people to your business. And then as an industry, well, there's so many things we do that don't make us money. Like we reinvent, content for our systems, and we just keep doing the same things in different ways, even internally. Like projects use different subsystems because someone had an opinion, and we almost as an industry need to tell these people, just stop reinventing, just go use this thing out in the open, accept it. Yes, it's not perfect, but like it's good enough. And hey, now you don't have to like have 50 digital leads to maintain like your object library. Like,
I think Nicholas has a spicy take.
Well, it's a spicy question. We've talked about IFCs, and clearly North America doesn't seem to work really, but elsewhere in the world it kind of does. I was talking to someone in Norway, for example, and out there it's open BIM all the way. It's huge.
But the government pushed it, right?
The government pushed
Yep.
it. It's actually implemented. So the
Yep.
theory actually works out there. So is it just the country or laws problem, or is IFC flawed in the first place? That's my spicy question.
Yeah.
Here's your take. I've actually never really had a good grasp of why USD.
That's
was foreboding. Why IFC didn't work in the US? Do you have Is there
I don't know that I can answer it other than going back to what I said. It's a passive thing. There's it's a written document, right? It's not something that you can get APIs for, get a cloud environment for, have anything to work against other than just you follow the standard or you did it.
Yeah.
Right?
But it started here, right? Building Smart is a US, it was a HOK, Autodesk thing.
Yeah.
But
It's an answer waiting for a question. Like a lot of clients don't actually use it well or at all in some cases. They just say it because everyone else says it, and it becomes this like thankless foreboding thing you have to do at the end of a project. I think like really we have to go back to first principles and get clients to really clearly tell architecture firms at the decision maker level what they actually want. Be more specific. Don't just ask for a set of drawings. Don't just ask for an IFC 2x3. Don't just ask for LOD 350 or whatever we keep hearing.
I know if Martin Day was here.
Yeah, you have a lot to say on that
Okay,
one.
you do his impression of I know his perspective would be that, well, I don't want to speak for him, but I think his perspective would be that U.S. firms are far closer to Autodesk.
Yes.
It feels
Yes.
like European firms are.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And if,
And that's down the road from you.
yeah, maybe that is it. Maybe it's a
Absolutely.
corporate culture difference.
Yes, I'm 100% sure of that. There is a much larger push in Europe and everywhere else to be open source versus in the US.
Yeah, true.
That is 100% true.
Mm.
And I think that's probably why it certainly didn't catch on here. There's no reason for us to have it, and there's no demand for it. But I think you said something that I completely agree with, which is the people who can really change this are the developers and owners.
Yeah.
These are the people who are funding these buildings. It's not the architects. It's not even the general contractors.
Yeah, that's where
And until they sit
more
down
money
and
is.
go, you all need to create a singular standard. The problem is the average developer or owner, from a developer standpoint, probably doesn't care. From an owner standpoint, just doesn't have the knowledge to be able to push back and go, this is absolutely ludicrous that there is no singular standard.
Yep.
I
I don't think they realize that too. I think they think that our systems are better than they are as an industry. They're
Yeah.
not aware of just
Oh my
how
gosh.
fragmented and messy
Holy
this
shit.
is. Yeah,
Let's
but
let this get out there.
But just by the way, clients, most firm systems aren't as good as you probably think they are. Like we're all doing different things in different ways, even if we're using the same software. So,
AEC, what was it? Years and years ago, where I was essentially asked to leave one of the firms was, the whole idea of interoperability is an absolute red herring. It doesn't exist the way people actually think it exists. It doesn't.
And that's what I was going to say with before when you said the architect has to deliver the IFC, but should it be the architect's responsibility, or should it be like a digital person involved with the client to manage? Yeah, like an advisor. Like, is it someone in-house at the client side? And like if the platforms are natively providing these things, is it someone else to wrangle that, right?
I mean, it's in the client's best interest to have someone that can impartially make sure they got the right thing. That's something that you risk if you don't have it, right?
Because the other part is like disciplines. Like you wouldn't go out and offer the structure model, for example, right? And so then you're now getting everyone to contribute their piece, which is also a challenge.
Even in Quebec, in theory, IFC, you can work in Revit with ArchiCAD and vice versa. In practice, it's pretty messy, right? I know architects who are using ArchiCAD because they're doing small residential projects, receiving structure file from Revit. It just doesn't work well.
No.
It's just a pain.
It's trash.
Just a pain.
But also, we shouldn't be in a position where we are just literally importing a file into another program. It's just insane. Like it should be linked at best. It shouldn't have to be like we dump a whole model into a platform that didn't make it in the first place. Like that seems wrong. Be selective. Be smarter.
And that goes back to the idea of a modular platform.
Yeah.
If you have a singular standard, singular platform, you can compete on how well your software works within that platform. There is still competition there. But anytime you have to import, export, do this, do that, you lose data. Things get weird and messy. Just even exporting Revit to CAD, things get weird.
Yeah,
Stacks
it's the
funny
same
on top of
company.
itself. It's just, and you can't. What did I say? Revit Revit hates every CAD product. It doesn't matter where it came from.
Yeah.
But yeah, a singular platform, a singular standard is the only way to really fix that.
All right. Spicy take time. I think the industry doesn't have enough respect for how hard that problem is to solve. It's really fucking hard.
It's huge.
And like, especially when you think about the modern tools, I'm not going to plug Arcol, but are collaborative and in real time. The idea like data schema just gets very washy and like there's not exactly a file format that you got to convert from this one to this one. And so like we get all the time of like, I want to be able to import, export IFC. And frankly, we say, fuck you, no. Go to Revit because that's what we're going to standardize on. And Revit is your interop machine. We don't want to solve that problem. And so like this is partly why like I personally am screaming out for you guys to try and solve this. Like standardize on Arcol or give me a better answer and we'll figure it out. Because I don't want to have to do the like, well, you want ArchiCAD and you want fucking SolidWorks and you want fucking whatever, all the fucking 1,000,001 CAD tools. It's interop. I think architects usually say, I just want to import my ArchiCAD file and just have it work. No, fuck you. No.
But I think a really hard part of that is I think like the real bugbear in import export is geometry, right? It's not usually data. So like I think if platforms and architects became better with how they modeled and put objects in place and they were more transferring data between things or putting much lighter representations of things in place, maybe that would help. But
I agree with you on the geometry. I don't necessarily agree with you on the data. Partially because if we take Kobe as a standard, right? It has an outline, but still you go to 15 different owners. You go to 15. That one parameter or whatever it is going to be different in every single FM system based on the owner's preferences. And so even data gets messy. You still got to like map everything.
Yeah, for these platforms, the hardest thing they're having converting is geometry. Like literally, I'm sure a big part of the work in your import exporters was probably dealing with the geometric conversions you have to like leapfrog through in the APIs of the programs you're getting in.
Yeah, it's well, at least in a real-time app, like the problem is users will say, well, like I want to import a Revit model. And it's like, okay, we can. That's not a. I want to have a go to Arcol. Okay, like we can figure that out, I guess. I don't really understand the use case. I want to make a change to the Revit model in Arcol and push back to Revit. And it's like, what are we? You're just asking because you've like heard this at a conference somewhere, and you think interoperability is important. There's not. Actually, that's my point. I said this to the team a while ago. Like there is. We need to solve the bare minimum of interoperability user problems. So long as users feel like my data isn't trapped and I can continue in my workflow, we've done our job. You guys need to fuck around on IFC shit for the next decade and come back to me when you guys figure it out. That's kind of where. I'll turn the spicy level down. I can.
It's good. Like, I mean, I guess in an ideal world.
I think I went a bit too much.
I guess in an ideal world, I mean, if architects have what they wanted, you'd literally just be shipping between products seamlessly, and you're like, oh, just ship it off to Piper, ship it back to Revit, ship it back into Arcol, and it just goes around and around. And I dream of a world where you do end up with people that specialize in particular software. It's not just one big software that everyone isn't actually that good at using at the end of the day. Where you do have like your Arcol team that smashes Fezos out, but they know how to cleanly get into like space planning and something like Piper, and then they know how to pivot back into Revit. And there's that. At least that process is more clearly defined. And I think the key there is that like architects have to care more about the technology they use. It can't just be down to digital leads. Like we can get people to care, we can bring them to water, but they've got to be thirsty. So like get thirsty architects like want better technology, demand it, and like that. I think that's what's going to work.
Yeah, I think that view of the world makes sense. I think the problem is that most of these software vendors are backed by venture capital. And so like there's not exactly always going to be clean buckets where these tools fit into, because by definition, if you raise venture capital, it's your job to like make lots of money. And so it's like really hard to build my investors aren't listening, a really big business at feasibility. We got to like go into SD and DD. Like we have to own the full stack. And the problem is all of our competitors think the same thing. And so like the interoperability problem isn't as like clean cut, because it's not only I want to get from startup to startup and legacy tool to legacy tool. It's like those lines are constantly shifting and the standards are constantly shifting. And so who determines the standard? And frankly, like I don't think you guys I don't think the industry has figured it out. I don't think vendors have really figured it out. I actually don't. I think potentially the answer is firms that do become far more verticalized and GCs that do take design service in-house, or whatever that lower developer services that do that they just say, we're going to build our own standard. And they're going to do a Pixar version where we're going to do our standard, and that will eventually become the USD of our industry. I think that's probably the way it plays out. Because it's a hard problem. It's like there's a lot of dynamics at play. It's a
Incentives,
technical
right?
problem.
Incentives
It's
are so
hard.
hard
It's
there.
not
I mean,
easy.
what incentive do you have to import to a competitor? Like, that's
Yeah, I think a lot of big firms are doing their own interoperability automations, working with the APIs. Like Etherwick had this whole presentation of how they went from Rhino to Revit, and it was all automated now. But anyway, in their words,
complete
it was
middleware. Yeah.
But it's again, it's big firms. What do you do when you're small to medium and you don't have that kind of budget to develop all these tools?
Yeah.
Or get a small and medium, medium firm that is that kind of firm that's doing the investment in it. Like that's their business model. Is
Yeah.
to invest in that. But I kind of agree with you that it needs to be like a big 900-pound gorilla that comes into the room and goes, "This is what we're doing. We're doing it better than anyone else. If you guys want to use our standard, come along." Well, yeah, that's going to be like a huge, like almost monopoly-sized company.
Just talking to your point before, Nick, about like small companies and medium-sized companies, right? And I think it feeds into your discussion as well, Gavin, around maybe digital people coming around and standardizing sets of components. Like, what happens to people that are content creators that provide to industry at that point? Are they involved in the discussions with digital leads or standardizing some of this stuff, right? Like, what's your take on that kind of coming from that angle when we use it?
That's a hard one. I'm not sure. I talked to so many people, and I'm not even sure. But it's like the more I hear about it, the less more uncertain I become. So many possibilities.
I have a spicy take on
let's go.
I hate it. I actually hate the amount of content that's out there, partially because if we go way back in time and you look at your architectural graphic standards book, this is what a light fixture looked like in plan. That's what I'm making. Is ultimately, I am still not delivering a model. What I am delivering is a set of floor plans and RCPs. And in an RCP, a pendant light looks like this. It doesn't matter the manufacturer. It doesn't matter the model style. It doesn't matter anything. So therefore, I need one object that is a pendant light. I don't need to go download 15 different pendant lights because that's what's in my project. I actually have either it as a type or an instance property that I map what we're calling it out. You go to the specs for that. So I think that whole industry is actually kind of silly in the long run, in my opinion.
I think it emerged because that was like a niche skill in Revit at the time. If you could do families, you were like hot stuff. And people got too proud of their ability to do nice families. And like we ended up just being like, look at that, look at this door. Oh, like it opens and closes. Like,
Triangles
you know, like
having your families.
Yeah, it's almost like the business card in American Psycho.
American
Look
Psycho,
at that.
Door
Look at my
opens
door
in
family.
2D, opens in 3D.
The lettering's raised. That's a good lamp. That's a really good lamp.
It's like, it's like we need to care less against the things that don't make us money anymore. That's the thing. A lot of BIM managers aren't in touch with core business anymore. They need to talk to the business leaders and say, hey, like, are you aware how much time we're spending doing some of these things? And like, if they found out, so I don't think they're always aware. They might not be very happy.
That's one of the things we've done at my firm.
Yeah, you make them aware.
We don't download that stuff unless it's really, really specific. We've downloaded some sync types that had like rips built into them because it really did have an impact on how we
part of
laid
the
out
design
space,
intent,
things like that. That's or if it's a really, really big like light fixture that is in the room and has an effect on the room. Otherwise, we have our library that looks like what we need it to look like. And use the specs. But that's again a decision on the firm and a decision on people who understand that kind of stuff. I was going to say something. Sorry.
I think there's a common theme with both what you're saying and what you're saying is there's the technical debt. I think there's also some industry debt. There's just some ways we do things. Because I kind of recoiled a bit when you were saying you go to the spec to get the information on that pendant fixture. Why do we need the spec? You know, I'm not arguing against specs. What I'm saying is, are we really truly rethinking things if we say things like, we always have gone to the spec to get the information versus bringing that spec information into that pendant object that's in the model.
Again, I agree with that though, but it doesn't have to look like the pendant.
I agree with your point, but we tend to say things when we hear ourselves saying things. Like, you have to go to the spec to get the information. Why? Right?
I'm not saying
do
the
you
spec
have to?
can't be integrated.
But I think more importantly, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Part of the problem is there's so many systems out there that everybody is invested in. When do we ever let go of all the current systems? And so that we're not constantly trying to write something new that meets the 5 things before,
like this,
and then we're trying to meet the things that were the 10 things that were before. Hell, we're still trying to write the DWG, right?
Totally. This is kind of IFC's problem, at least like my perspective. Like IFC was formed from like Autodesk and Nemetschek getting together, going, all our tools go speak together. You overlap the data schema and you do a like git merge, and you go, this is all the shit we have in common. That's IFC. And it's like we're now standardizing modern tools of how 1990s tools are built. And it's become the industry standard. We get requests all the time for I want IFC import export. And like there's not really the like
Who's asking for that? From which country?
I'm curious.
Is it in the US? Probably not.
It's not coming from
Without identifying.
there was a firm that I can't say the name of that we did a really cool project with. And the biggest reason why they didn't buy Arcol was they didn't have IFC export. And I said, great, you're not the right firm.
So, just out of curiosity, when you're working with them in that scenario and they want an IFC export, knowing that Arcol are in like the feasibility and kind of block and stack stage at the moment, why did they need IFC truly of that? Is it to import elsewhere or?
Because it's like, we're not sure if we're going to take this into Revit or ArchiCAD.
Yeah, right.
So let's just bring it into IFC because our firm is standardized on IFC 5.321175.754. I was like, cool. Do you also have IFC 5.75? And I was like, no, fuck, this is not the problem. That like what you're trying to solve is getting your data from there to there.
That's
Very
what I was
logical
curious
problem.
by, right? Like,
Yeah, but that's a very logical problem. Like tools shouldn't be walled gardens. I'm fully on board with that. And Arcol, if users ever feel like I can't get my data nicely out of Arcol because there's some business incentive involved, we fucked up because that's what the industry is today.
Yeah.
But the industry feels like it's gone far on this side where I need my data schema in this very open format that actually doesn't really make a lot of fucking sense because that's what people said I need. And like I think there is, I don't know if it's a new open data schema. I don't know if it's some of the work that Greg is doing. Like we should get him on. I mean, we've only got a couple minutes, but I know he can rant with this kind of data shit for all time.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Whoa, we're getting
it
it.
works.
Again, for those on the live stream, we are about to run a 200-person event. We're just hanging out drinking Guinness. Like I don't think
Pretty much.
I know we got to wrap it in like 10 minutes anyway.
Yeah, so we should have just come down to begin with.
Yeah.
Easy with the table.
Yeah,
and
this
everything,
is so much better.
How is IFCs in Australia or in New Zealand? Is it
sort of-
reuse or not really?
It's a begrudging task for BIM managers generally. In
Yeah.
my experience, I think some
They're kind of
firms
pissed.
use it well, but they've had
Yeah.
to put a lot of work into making their workflows.
Yeah, do you
smoother.
use it
Yeah.
only to deliver to the clients, or it's used in other phases of the project?
Some
as well?
clients specifically want
Yeah.
it for like FM purposes,
Do
like
they actually use it, or it's
transport department.
Here comes
Yeah.
Greg. Greg is on the way. For those that don't care about data, please leave. 'Cause that's all we're about to talk about.
I think we're all staying here, aren't we? We all care about
shaking
data.
his head, walking down. Greg, we're talking about your favorite topic, which is interoperability between design tools.
Okay.
And I was shitting on IFC, and I wanted what a modern
IFC
perspective
is
should look like.
for or against?
I am for data being put together outside of tools, not
Okay.
between tools.
Sure,
Yeah. So
but that's not IFC,
I don't
right?
think anybody's gonna fight.
it's. I mean, there's nothing special about IFC. It's like, it's a step representation, which I would take a solid representation over a mesh any day.
Mhm.
If you can find me a solid representation besides step that's outside of a design tool, you're sort of stuck. So, it's got implementation challenges, sure, but I think the motivation is never been on the authoring tools to make the external data really good.
Yeah.
So
Do you want to give for those listening, Greg is Director of Design Tech at HOK? Is that your
Yeah.
title? Do you want to give the TLDR on Magnetar, whatever you're naming your project?
Oh no! So I had a research effort basically that was Magnetar, which is a kind of neutron star. So if you blow up a supernova, you get a black hole, or you get a neutron star. And Magnetar is the most magnetic one, which means blow it up and then suck it back together, or blow it up and just make a mess. So that's the analogy. But the actual turns out, like the thing I've been working on a couple of years is work is a stretch, right? It's a hobby. Is really what we need is a way to connect metadata across a bunch of things in different representations. And all the strange matter stuff, which is the thing inside magnetars, is just
This is
just a header. That's all you like. Basically, think about like blob storage and stuff like that. All you're talking about is really how do you connect these things together in such a way, and using metadata to do this is sort of how the world works these days, and so that's generally it's all come down to. Inside HOK, we're starting to use it for like getting data out of Revit and then putting it in a database and be able to add to that data outside of the authoring tools, so basically graph combinations and stuff like that. It certainly could. I mean, we're trying to do the most basic stuff, which is get like room boundaries and then classify them so you can train a trainer.
Who is this? This is effectively a pipeline you're building, right?
Yeah, and really all you need on top of the pipeline is a bit of metadata to figure out what this is, and can I go back to the source, or how do I put it back together, stitch it together with other data sets?
So is the right way to think about this that someone has to maintain this pipeline? Like, how is this? Is this like a building smart style organization that owns the pipeline standards? Like, how does this play out?
Yeah, but most
I
standards,
guess it makes sense.
most standards bodies don't do anything more than reference implementations, right?
Yeah.
So, do you need if you want to stitch this data together across companies and sort of things, this is where I'm sure Bob mentioned the IDC and these sort of things, like, where you actually need commercial entities that are for the firms versus against the firms, if you will, to help do that sort of things. So
is the tool like, just because the closest thing I can align it to is like Dorophis is like a database that sits outside of authoring tools that you can populate data into.
Yeah, I think the somebody was giving me the analogy of Obsidian, the very popular, sort of markdown tool, and the point is, you could kill Obsidian and the markdown data would still be 100% intact, and you could swap out the tool. A database like Dorophis is a little too specific to its own internal presentation and stuff like that. So like
getting another tool to manage that rather than being open.
Yeah, so it's open and fully described. Like the data itself outside of any one of the tools. And this is why USD is pretty popular, because actually, no one would make USD from Pixar, which is the sort of what the VFX industry is doing. Nobody would make that if the goal was just to get the data out. It's actually an execution environment. It's a bunch of custom. You can put application logic outside of the tool, and so that, to me, that's the thinking about the right direction, not necessarily just the data, but you need to like how all the relationships work between stuff.
Is the goal that this becomes the standard? Like, how do you think about spreading / standardizing?
The metadata has to be standard, but like I think it's perfectly practical to say, oh, I know about something that I can't interact with, but I know what it is and I know what to ask for it through an API, and I can always go back to it. But then you're talking about more like, if I can stitch it together, then I can talk to a web service, and then you do have to have compliant APIs and stuff like that. And I think that's the thing we're most worried about, is APIs that aren't willing to give you all the data back. Certainly the way the world is going right now is the problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was going to say, you nailed the use case. Like, I've got a mic, but you're saying like your training data. Like, I mean, if you meaningfully want to build those types of things, you're not going to do it by building one little app for every single application we have to use. I mean, I think it's a brilliant idea to get the data out, build a tooling in one place, one way.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul and I have had this conversation, so it's like I'm a platform person, not a product person. So I
think we agree on.
Yeah, it's really like how much product you have to build to get the platform, and what are the right sort of patterns you have to like implement to do that. But yeah, I would much rather build 50 apps that have a shared set of tooling that you could put together. But I can make the example is an interior app for a lab planner is not the same as for a furniture planner. These are two separate domains, but they have the same pieces.
So do you think the way that software vendors like Arcol and others contribute to this is like effectively better documented APIs? Like, is that what the future looks like? It's just we build our schema, we in a very detailed way document our schema, our API, and just kind of hand it to the industry and say good luck?
I think it's API is good, but I actually think any data that you can, any relationships, any metadata you have, like the problem with an API is you're only going to expose what you think we need.
So that's what I'm saying. We just need to expose everything and document.
Yeah,
in a
I
very
would
clean
much
way.
rather have your give me a read-only access to everything you have, and then give me an API when you figure out what people want.
So this kind of like the concept we had earlier, where it's like it's not, as a vendor, it's not clear. Do you like standardize an IFC? Is there a schema you guys are going to figure out? That's a very clear answer to me. Just like document every part of your API as best as possible. Good luck, and you guys let us know if we didn't do something as well as is needed for your pipeline. That's a very clear answer for me.
But this is exactly how like the ODA and these sort of reverse engineering. Just to connect some dots here, files were reverse engineerable.
Yeah.
Without that, you can never reverse engineer anything. It's not perfect, but yeah, I can know what I'm missing by seeing everything, but I will never get everything if I just get an API that's like, here's the objects and here's the things I bless for you to see.
So you're talking about like engineerable file formats to some degree there, like like working with GeoJSONs, those types of things where we have a way to like interpret. What we need
those are the things that are standard that you are just connecting to say, well, indeed. So the Revit work we're doing internally is GeoJSON based. I just have a component that says that's a Revit room and it's in GeoJSON. And it says what room it was in the authoring model and where it came from and the version and all that stuff. That to me, that's the exact way to think about it. Represent the data in other standards and then stitch it together in a way that you can,
I think
use tooling.
I know we got to wrap in a second. I think this live stream has been pretty emblematic of the entire industry, or at least the state of it. We spent about an hour debating interoperability, and then Greg came in and solved it in 5 minutes. Now, this is how the future of interoperability is going to work.
I think about it. I'm not actually a software developer, so you can't
But
actually
I think
say
that
I
use case
solve
makes
anything.
sense. Like, it's like, expose APIs best possible. You guys will figure it out. That's a very logical answer to me.
Yeah, because I think the industry is maturing there is a discussion to be had about bigger firms and the collection of firms. We can deal with APIs. We can make tools. Not everybody could do that, but at least like there's an opportunity to sort of get access to everything. And I think that will work itself out because, most tools don't actually have good APIs right now.
Totally. Like, we don't have an API at all.
Just saying, give us the kingdom, we'll build the case.
Yep.
Like the approach.
I know we got to wrap because I got to start welcoming guests in a second. Anything else you guys wanted to add to anything we talked about?
Pretty good.
It's fun. Yeah. Cool. Hope everyone else enjoyed it
All
as
right.
well. And nice
Apologies for the earlier issues. I'm
I'm
glad
sure
we got to
they're still
figure it out.
tracking the viewer counts in the comments. But thanks if you
Yeah,
are.
well, hopefully not.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Cheers.
There we go.
Cool. Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Cool. I think
See
the
ya.
camera gets rolling till they. Yeah.
They'll keep figuring out.
Thanks. Oh, it's hot at the window.